Hello there and welcome to another video. Today we're talking about what the hell happened to badass fairy tales. How come we went so soft on the fairy tales? So I have been reading the Grimm fairy tales, this book. It's a collection of all of the stories collected by the brothers Grimm in the 1800s. And I thought that this revealed quite a lot about us and our society. The main thing that I think it shows is how we've kind of traded harshness for hope when we tell our stories. These stories are very harsh and to the point. And now our stories are all about hopeful messages. It also shows that our threshold for discomfort has been lowered significantly. Because these were children's stories, and people would not tell their children stories like this anymore. If you're not aware, the biggest difference is, of course, that these stories are full of violence. For example, at one point, the villain, the evil person, gets punished by being put in a barrel with boiling oil. So they get boiled alive, but that's not all. Together with them in the barrel, they have put heat-resistant snakes. So the snakes will not die from the boiling, but the person will. So they're not just boiled alive, but they're boiled alive with heat-resistant snakes, which is, I think, to be honest, a very important detail. But yeah, anyways, things like that happen in these stories. I think it revealed quite a lot about our society. So these new Disney adaptations and all of these things, Rapunzel and Snow White and all of this, that are actually from this book, it shows how we've changed as a society and how we've kind of rewired our human condition a little bit. These stories are all about survival. They're all about overcoming hunger and scarcity and really surviving existential threats. The characters are fighting for their lives. In the Disney adaptations, it's more about overcoming or finding your individualism. It's all about self-esteem, individuality, and more about achieving your personal dreams. So the focus is very different. It shows that our storytelling has kind of shifted from a kind of survival morality to more of a self-actualization kind of focus. Another thing that I notice about the stories is that the Grimm tales are not at all aware of psychology. Whereas Disney is very therapy and psychology aware. There is a kind of inner lives in characters nowadays. If you watch the Disney movies, the characters are having inner reflections and their doubts, and characters are growing and they're developing, and characters change over time. In the Grimm tales, there is no such thing. The Grimm characters, they don't have inner lives. They don't grow. They only react to the circumstances around them, and they are what they are, and that's about it. There's no personal growth. The modern characters are, of course, not like that, and I think this shows that our society. It's not because the author necessarily. The authors of the stories are more stupid back then than they are today. It's just that the audience, I think, has changed. We have become so proficient in this kind of psychological language and about these psychological things, and we're so aware of therapy and all these things and the effect of previous experiences and all that, that it's also being reflected in our stories. We've absorbed so much also now in the stories that we already see about inner change and the psychological language, that it's kind of what we want other stories to reflect now as well. We're interested in that sort of stuff. We want to know what past experiences has made the character the way they are now. This does not happen in the Grimm tales. And while reading the Grimm tales, it kind of forced me a little bit to consider what does a story look like without psychology. And you notice that the stories are a lot more flat. Like they don't have so much depth to them because of that. Then there's of course the difference in the purpose of the stories. Back then, the Grimm tales, they were teaching the kids how to navigate danger, actual danger. Even if the danger might not always be real, like witches and things like that, but danger as in don't trust strangers, be aware that some people have ulterior motives, things like that. Like don't trust blindly, basically. So old stories taught the kids to navigate danger. Modern stories, they teach kids how to kind of navigate their feelings. And this kind of goes back to the same principle or what I talked about before, that the Grimm stories, they're all about overcoming hunger, predators, and cruel stepmothers. Whereas in the Disney movies, the characters need to overcome self-doubt. They need to overcome their emotional wounds from the past and kind of find their identity. And so this kind of is a very obvious indicator of how our threats have changed. Before we were concerned with the kids wandering into the forest and being eaten by wolves. Now we are concerned with the fact that the kids are going to grow up being sad. So it kind of clearly shows how society has changed in that regard. Then we have the kind of dream logic as well. These stories all have a kind of dream logic where things just happen. And the author or the storyteller doesn't feel the need to explain how they ended up in this situation. For example, people just get married like that. Normally, there's a kind of relationship and things evolve and eventually people get married. But in these stories, people meet, they don't really mind each other, and then all of a sudden they get married. So there's the kind of dream logic, and there's jumps that don't always make perfect sense. Whereas the modern stories, and this is because the audience asks for it, we want to have a kind of coherent evolution of the story. We want to see the arc of the story and all of these things. But in the past, it was not really demanded by the audience. I think also that the kind of difference between the violence in these stories and the violence in the modern stories also goes back to the same kind of principle of the purpose, what we want to teach the audience when we tell the stories. So the Grimm stories, they use fear in order to teach caution. This makes sense. They use fear in order to teach survival instincts. That makes sense. But then the Disney stories, they use comfort. They want to comfort us. We want to have a pleasant time watching the movies or all of these things. So Disney uses comfort in order to teach optimism. Disney uses comfort to teach this kind of self-love, and Disney uses comfort to give you the idea of endless possibilities to achieve your dreams. So that makes sense. The Grimm stories used fear, and nowadays we use comfort because our message has changed. Like I said before, the society feared the wolf, and now we fear that the children are going to be sad. Very different priorities. So, in conclusion, I would also like to say that the Grimm tales describes a very dangerous world. Also sometimes a very unrealistic world with witches and things like that. Whereas Disney describes a little more gentle world, but also sometimes a bit delusional, if I'm gonna be honest. In the Disney movies, the villains, they always explain themselves. There's a redemption is pretty common. and death is not really real. It's more a symbolic death, which is not real life. Villains don't explain themselves. Redemption is not that common, and death is death. If someone dies, they're dead. It's not symbolic, and it's not something easy. It's always going to be pretty hardcore. You cannot soften it too much either. I would not say that either of these worldviews is better. One is better than the other, but it reveals something about the audience, because the worldview has changed, obviously. There are some funny immoral lessons that you can take away from this book as well. For example, if you ever come across animals that talk, assume that they are more intelligent than any human you've ever met. Marry immediately, I would also say, is the advice from this book. In order to distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys, basically anyone young, pretty, or poor is a good guy, whereas anyone that is ugly or that is a stepmother is evil. I don't know if this is going to be useful advice for you in your life. But yeah, according to the Grimm tales, you need to watch out for the ugly people, because they tend to be the villains. That's about it. I hope this video was interesting. For me, it was interesting because I thought it gave me some insights to our current society. But at the end of the day, it's also just some goofy stories from the past, and that's about it. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.